Hello and welcome to the channel. So we have a Fender Pro Junior 4 here, and I really rate these amps. I really like them. We did one on the channel last year, and it was in a bit of a state, and we sorted it all out, and it made a cracking amplifier. This one's in the beautiful red Tolex, really nice looking amp. So this amp runs absolutely fine. The tubes just look like they're running a bit hot. The paint on the EL84s is turning white, and it's the age-old problem with these amps being biased too hot. The Blues Junior and the Pro Junior, we've done lots of videos on the Blues Junior. So I wanted to delve into this bias a little bit more on this. Now the other problem with these amps is the filament voltage. Because this is wired for 230 volts and not 240, it pushes the filament voltage up. Unfortunately, you cannot change from 230 to 40 on this amp like you can the Blues Junior. So let's turn it round, get the back off, and then we can have a bit of a look. Right, just having a look in the back, and if we zoom in, you can there, and now you can see the tubes. I would have to say that they're baking. So this paint, if it begins to change colour, it tells you that these tubes are running hot. It's what the manufacturers use as well when you buy tubes. If you put them in your amp and you turn the paint white, you avoid the warranty, because it tells them that you've not biased it correctly. And these amps don't bias correctly, so there's no, as with the Blues Junior, there is no bias preset pot. So the first thing we're going to do in this amp is we're going to, let's just zoom out, you're just staring at a pair of tubes there. We're going to check the bias on this amp and see just what these tubes are running at. Now you can see with this amp's only about 3 years old. You can see these IC caps are the Cornell Doublier ones, so these are absolutely fine. They're not the older grey ones. So these are the Doubliers, and this amp's Doubliering along nicely with them, so there's no cause to change those or anything. Getting the board out of this amp as well is no big shake. You know, you've got a couple of knobs and just what we got to get this board out, a couple of knobs and a socket. Am I right? Yeah, a couple of knobs and a socket, and obviously the usual deal with the pilot light if you've taken one of these out before. So yeah, it should be pretty quick just to flip that board out and sort the bias out on these tubes. We'll test these tubes as well and just see if the 3 years of swaging them has taken the life out of them. See if the emissions are down on them. But other than that, this amp doesn't need much doing to it. And as I say, I've gigged one of these amps, and they are monstrously loud, and they really do cut through as well on your lead brakes and stuff. They're mint amp, really good. I'd take these over the Blues Junior any day. And they've got a bigger output transformer on them as well. I was really surprised when I took the other one to bits. The Blues Junior output transformer is a little bit weedy. That's one of the mods that we've actually never done on the Blues Juniors, is change the output transformer. And to be fair, that's a really good mod to do. We've done just about every other mod on them. Right, let's fire it up and take a few readings. Right, you can see the meter there. And the first thing I like to do really is check out all my test points first of all, make sure that I've got them right. So that's a plate, and that's a plate, and we've got 300 volts. Let me put this on the other side because you can't see because of my arm. Let's see if we can prop it up. It's not always easy. There we go, a bit of improvising there. You can just see that in the corner there. We just bring the camera down. There we go. So yeah, so plate 300 volts, plate 300 volts, and centre tap 303 volts. Now I've got the current limiter on at that, because when I'm first probing around in amps I like to put that on. 331. So we're looking at about 331 for our plate voltage. I'm also looking for a pen to write it down with. So turn the volumes down. So now what we're going to do is measure from the centre tap. You can just about see that, what I'm doing. Just gripping that. There we go. So I'm going to measure from centre tap to plate. And I've got 3 volts there. Let's see what I've got on the other side. So that's measuring from centre tap to the other side of the transformer, which is the brown wire. So brown has 3.15 and blue has 3 volts. Near enough 3.1 though, wasn't it? 3.08. We'll call it 3.1 all round, just for a rough test. Now we need to switch off. I think that noise is the meter affecting it. We need to switch off, and we'll just let the voltage run out of it. Let's just test. And you see that going down, it's virtually nothing. Right, we'll put it on. Oh dear, fail. Right. So we'll put the meter on resistance. And now we're going to measure, again, from plate, from centre tap, which is this reddy pink wire here, and more like the pink of my PRS, that bonnie pink, and brown. So we're looking for a resistance reading, usually around about 100 ohms ish on most of these Fenders type of amps, these Woes Junior, Pro Junior, and 94.6. So do for that. Now let's try blue. So again, the pinky red wire to blue. And look at that. They're both the same. Just check again. Oh no, I'd measured blue the first time. Always go back and double check. So we're a little bit out there. Are we now? No, we're not. That's perfect. So yeah, they're an absolute match, those. That's really good. So that's even better. So all we've got to do now is the maths on that and find out how much this amp is being driven. So we are looking for 8.4 watts. This amp is fixed bias, so it's set at 70% of 12 watts, which is 8.4. So we'll check it and see, see how close it is. I can tell you from those figures it's going to be high. So 3.1 divided by 94.6. We only really have to do one calculation as well, because it's so the transformer is so accurate. So we'll just do one side to start off with. So that's drawing 32.7 milliamps. It should be around 23, I think, if it's 8.4 watts times 331, and that's actually not bad. That's actually 10.8. So that's not too bad on there, according to that. Not as bad as I thought it would be. Just check it again. Whoops. 10.8. So there, that's actually not bad. But of course, with a fixed bias amp, when you're blasting away and you're using this on gigs and things, the bias then really comes up the bias increases with the current being drawn from swaging it, and so these are still over biased once it gets cranked up there. So 10.8 should be 8.4, so better than the last one I looked at. Those were set at 13 watts, and again it depends on what the tubes are drawing. You know, you could put a new set of tubes in this, and if they're drawing more current, then you could well end up with 13 watts being drawn. They could also be tired, you know, maybe they've just said, I've had enough. Maybe they're just that, you know, if they're not drawing as much current because they're getting tired. But we can check that on the meter, which is what we'll do now. Right, let's check these tubes. So yeah, yep, that seems okay. I mean, it's not, it has lost some of its emissions, but it's hanging in there. Let's try the other one. Yes, and you can see that they've obviously, that even being that over biased, you know, when this amp's been cranked up, and it probably has been, you can see there, and this tests a bit under, so that's probably about 65. You'd expect to see these round about 85, 90. You know, even after 3. I mean, people think, oh, tubes don't last long, but they do, you know, if they're not abused. I've tested tubes that's been in amps years and they test amazing, but these have had a lot of hammer, and it seems to be a running thread. If you get tubes and you look at them and they're really hot like that, you know, you can see they've been overheated and over swaged, whatever. You tend to find the emission is down on them. So yeah, they've had some hammer. But having said that, they're still usable, so we'll leave that off for a minute, put that back on at the end. So yeah, this is just, sorry, we had to focus because we focused in on the tube tester. So well, I think while we're got it out and doing it, we might as well check the 12AX7s as well. So let's just do the settings. So it is 9E1 and test is 3 and 8. So we've got him in there, so we'll start with 3. We'll flick that, that's it, so you can see it a bit better. We'll see what these have got to offer us. Well, he's not got a deal to offer us, has he? Unless I've got the readings wrong on the amp. That was the phase inverter tube as well. I've actually only tried, I should have tested the other side. And you can see that one's got quite a bit more. By gum, these tubes have had some hammer. And 8. Let's just try this one again. That's rinsed. That's right. So also the shorts light's coming on again, unless that's on that one. Let me just check the book just to make sure I have got the settings right, but I'm sure I have. Yep, 9E1 test is 3 and 8. So I'm afraid he's not looking very healthy at all. See, he's fine on the other side, but actually, having said that, it looks like it's cleared. But that's the phase inverter tube. So I need to check that it's got the 47 picofarad capacitor across the phase inverter plate resistors, because if not, that's probably what's worn that out with the oscillation. Well, there we go. So yeah, not a great start for the tubes. Right, it's R29 for the bias, and in this one it's 20k, not 15. The last one I did, it was 15. Check back in my notes, which explains why the other one was biased at 13 watts and this one is about 11. If I tested this, we got 233 going in on the wall, so add another 10 volts on that tonight and that will be 11 watts. So we need to reduce that a bit, and obviously we can see from the state of these tubes that we need to reduce that. So R29. So R29 is hiding behind these wires here on the board there. So I'm going to get this, yes, pink, I'm going to get this board out now, and we're going to have a look at that. Right, showing you what I'm doing here. So I'm modding. So what I've done is I've put some leads through, and I've bent the leads over, and I've made some hooks for this resistor to slide through. So I'm going to solder this resistor on there. Now that resistor is 68k, and then I'm going to show you what I'm doing on the other side of the board. So I'm just going to solder that up. Right, there we go, he's soldered on, and that is absolutely solid in there. So that stays at the back of there. So you're thinking 68k, well that's way over what it needs to be. So if we measure across it now, and we'll use this meter up here. So I've just flicked the camera up onto this meter quickly on here. If we go on to ohms, now we need about 23k to balance this in, I think. Now if I put those around there, you can see that's going up. We've got 27.8 there. The reason for that is I have paralleled 50k pot, trim pot, Bourne's trim pot, and I've done exactly the same on the other side as I have with this. I've made some holes on the leads, coiled it round, and then just slid it in and soldered it, and we'll have a look at that now. So we should have about 28.8k. The Bourne's pot was about 48k, so but we're still well in with that. So if we just come down a bit now to the amp, and if we back out with the camera, whoops. So now we're looking there on the board, and you can see our trim pot there. And if we look, the legs are a bit thin on these Bourne's pots, but that's okay. It's solid enough. Obviously, if you started yanking at it, and it's well soldered in, that's the main thing, because I've got, I've made some holes for the leads to go through. So now all we've got to do is tweak that, get it to about 23k, and we are good to go. So why have I put a resistor on the back of the trim pot? Well, if the trim pot fails, gets dust in it, or it fails for any reason, it will go open, and when it goes open, then instead of having 23k for the bias, we'll have 68k for the bias, and the amp will just run stone cold and it won't burn the tubes up. If we just put a trim pot on it and no backup resistor, then if the pot fails, it'll fry the output tubes and probably the power transformer as well if the fuse doesn't blow in time. So that's it's just a safety feature really. So I'm going to get this put back together, and it takes about 5 minutes to get this board out. It really is easy. So all you do is you obviously take the pots off, you take the nut off on the input on the top. Let's just go up and see. So you need to take the knobs off, the jack socket there, and then you take the screws out of the board. You need to cut the tie wraps. So if we go down again, so you need to cut the tie wraps on the wires. You need to take the center tap off and the plates, and so you can get that down. And I had to take this off the switch here. You can just about see it, the board's in the way. There you can see it. So I had to take that off there as well. And that's all you have to do to take these boards out. So the pots, the socket, the screws, the plate feeds, the center tap, cut the tie wraps. Obviously pilot light has to come out, but that's easy. See how that goes in there, and then just take that off the switch and out it comes. And there we go, the board's back in, and there's our bias preset pot. Now it is overlapping that capacitor a little bit, but it's not major. I didn't want it overlapping the diode, but yeah, it is overlapping that a bit, but it's fine. There's no risk of it becoming disconnected, because it's not just been tacked on, it's a mechanical connection before it was soldered, so it's absolutely fine. We can adjust the bias now, and yeah, if somebody comes to recap this amp in, you know, another 10 years time, they might have a bit of a job fishing that capacitor out of there, but they'd probably be able, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And at the end of the day, you know, at least the tubes are going to last a long time now. So it's time to fire up now. So I've taken the output tubes out just in case we don't have any bias on the tubes, and pin 2 is the grid, so we're going to put that on there, and we're going to switch on and just check what we've got, and there we are, -15 and climbing. So we've got bias, so that's good, so we can put the tubes in, and the current limiter's on as well, which is reducing that. I've only got a 100-watt bulb in there, so that will be reducing the bias voltage as well. That's good. So the tubes can go back in, and we'll bring the amp up just on that 100-watt bulb. Can't get the meter in very well now. I just need to check the plate voltage. $287 on the bulb, so that's quite high considering it's on the bulbs. It's only on a 100-watt bulb as well. So right, now we're looking at that meter up there, and we've got 0.86, but remember we've only got a 100-watt bulb in, so let's put a 200-watt bulb in. Now we're looking for something like 2.5 on there. I would think. Have to be careful because Pink's lurking in the background, and obviously we don't want her on the bench due to the high voltage. So you can see we've got 1.3 volts now. I've got that, we're getting that reading from one side of the transformer, so we're across center tap and the blue wire, which is the plate. So if we look at that, so 1.32, and we divide that by our 94.6, is only 13.9 milliamps, so that's quite low. So if we now start to turn our pot, we should see that voltage begin to come up, and it is. So I think, if I remember, it was 3.1 before. These Bourne's pots are pretty good. There we go, 2.5. Let's try that. Not going to be far out with that. That's 26 milliamps. So we now need to get our plate voltage. Oh, I'm just going to flick the current limiter on, because I'm going to be taking this off of here in case I create a short doing it. And then I'll flick the current limiter on, and we've now got 336, say 337. And that's 8.9, so we can come down a little bit, so maybe about 2.34, so I wasn't far out on that. 8.4, so we can just go onto the limiter again, and just connect onto there. So put the limiter back off, take the limiter off, sorry. Just come down. So I think that'll be about there, 2.4, something like that. That's 24.8 milliamps, so I'm guessing that's about right. I said about 23, 24 at the start of the video. Something very microphonic. That's me tapping the power cable. Not sure what's going on there. So again, current limiter, we come off of there, we go onto there, back off the current limiter, and that's giving us 338 volts. So, and I'd call that perfect on that side of the transformer. 8.4 on the nose. So our bias trim pot's working splendiferously well. And again, if you know, should that fail, the bias will just go cold. So that's good. So now let's try the other side. So we just need to you can hear that noise. It's not the amp being funny. Pink ripping away at her scratch post. 8.2. So 8.2 and 8.4 then at that. So yeah, this probably a 0.34 watt of a difference, because obviously the mains is fluctuating, and since I've taken one side, the other, but I mean, we're talking points. They're a perfectly matched set of tubes actually, and that is a wrap, period. That's job done. So yeah, we've got our bias trim pot in there. Let's just take these off. That's it. Flick the current limiter off. Could do with a preamp tube, and we can, if we go in there, you can see how I've soldered that up there. We've just coiled the wire around, made a loophole, put the pin through there, and yeah, job done. Done that on both sides, and it's solid. So if you've got one of these Pro Juniors and you want to get the bias right, that's the way to do it. 68k resistor, put it on the back of the board. So how I did that, I coiled the wires on one end, put a coil on, so I've got a hook hole to go through, created a hook, soldered did it on both terminals. I've cut off one of the legs on the Bourne's trim pot, so I've just got a wiper and one of the other terminals. Slid the terminals on the Bourne's pot through the hooks, soldered them up, and then I put the leads through on the other side, turned 2 more hooks on either side, slid the 68K in and soldered it up. Obviously I've soldered the leads going through, I've soldered those into the board first and then bent the legs over. You have to be careful when you're doing it, because if you yank, you've got to be really patient when you're making the hooks on the other side, because if you pull too hard you're liable to pulling the tracers off. But if you're careful and take your time, it's a tricky thing. So we've got a 68K pot on resistor on the back, and we've got a 50K trim pot, and that gives you about 28K, 28.8K is the exact figure. With the maths, obviously that trim pot was 48K, so it came out at about 26.8, something like that. And then all you do is you adjust your trim pot, and you're probably looking for about 23K. In fact, we could test that, couldn't we? Now we'll switch off and we'll just see. That's exactly where the bias should be. It's set perfect, so we can test that now. We can measure that. We'll just let the voltage drain out of it. Right, enough waffling, let's get that measured, shall we, and see exactly what resistance we've got on there. So if we get these on there, that's it, and then on this we should get a reading. We go up there. There we go, we're getting one. So go up there, 22.5K we've got on there. And the last one of these I put a 22 in there. We're now up to 242 volts on the mains here as well. So when I started this earlier on, I broke off and had my dinner, had my tea. We got 233, so it just goes to show. But we've biased that at the higher end of that voltage as well. So yeah, 22.5 we've got on there. Right, we've got the Pro Junior up on top of the 4x12. It's not plugged into it, mind you. Let's have a listen. So a lovely woody tone. Not ever so bassy, but it really is a lovely tone. Let's put it on the bridge picker. It's a bit bright, this. That's with the top tone full up. Whoa, that's bright. And that's with no tone. Let's put a bit in. So there we go, just a simple amplifier there, just a volume and a tone, you can't go wrong. And I can't crank this up in here obviously, or the neighbours will go ballistic because they're incredibly loud and they sound awesome. These amps just sound great, really cool amp, and it just looks cool with the Tolex, and it's running absolutely fine. The filament voltage at this time of night will be getting a bit high, up to about 7 volts. Not a lot we could do about that. There was a resistor that I was going to look at in the filament circuit, but I actually studied the schematic, and when I actually looked at the amp, I realised that resistor was on the tube board, the thin tube board where the tube sockets are mounted. And I was taking all of that out and stuff, so maybe when we get another one in that's, you know, really poorly, we'll strip it down and see if we can cure that one as well, you know, cure the filament voltage. We can't change the voltage from 230 to 240, so, but we've done a really good bias mod there. And for anybody who's got one of these Pro Juniors, then, you know, that's giving you some insight into, you know, getting your bias sorted out and making it adjustable. So that'll do it for this one. So thanks for watching, and you all take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye for now.